I wish I could give you more time than I can because I think you're a cold-blooded killer. I hope you never get out of jail.
Report the shots fired in Nordstrom. Report of shots fired in Nordstrom.
So, babe, did you find the purse that you want?
Beyond innocent and youthful smiles lies a chilling reality. Some kids don't just make mistakes, they commit unimaginable crimes. From Sofia Koval's startling betrayal to Luchiano Lewis's terrifying attack, these young offenders went from kids to killers, forever altering their lives and the lives of their victims. Let's begin.
We, the jury, found the defendant in the second count, felony murder, guilty. We, the jury, found the defendant in the third count, felony murder, guilty.
On March 1, 2016, 28-year-old Shane Varnadore, hardworking and kind, did his usual night shift delivering pizzas for Papa John's, dreaming of designing video games. But that night, he never made it home. Authorities later uncovered that Shane was lured to an apartment complex in Gwinnett County, Georgia, by two teens, Reginald Lofton and Jermaine Young, who intended to rob him. Upon Shane's arrival, he was shot and killed. Police couldn't determine which of the teens pulled the trigger, but under Georgia law, aid in a crime resulting in death holds equal responsibility with the shooter. At 14, Lofton played a crucial role by providing the phone used for the fake order. After Shane was killed, Lofton took the pizza back to his apartment as if nothing had happened.
During the lick, the pizza man flinched on him and the gun went off and he shot him.
Yes.
And I said, Reginald, did you hear that gunshot? He said, no, I had my headphones on.
Lofton was arrested and tried for Shane's murder. The courtroom was filled with emotion as the prosecution narrated how a man's life was taken over something as trivial as a pizza. Shane's family members shared their pain. His mother was too emotional to read her statement. His sister described how her young daughter didn't understand death, asking repeatedly when she would see her uncle again. The judge showed no sympathy for Lofton and before sentencing stated, "I wish I could give you more time than I can because I consider you a cold-blooded killer. I hope you never leave prison." But because of a recent U.S. Supreme Court ruling, minors convicted of murder couldn't be sentenced to life without parole. It was considered cruel and unusual punishment. Lofton was given life in prison with the possibility of parole. He would have to serve 30 years before becoming eligible, meaning he wouldn't even have a chance at release until he was 45 years old. As the verdict was read, tears streamed from the defendant's eyes.
How a teen that young, 14 at the time of the crime, to be sentenced to life without parole.
Before sentencing, Lofton's sister pleaded for clemency, saying, "Instead of throwing him under the jail cell, give him a second chance."
That my brother do deserve a second chance at life instead of throwing him under the jail cell.
Lofton faced numerous struggles growing up. After losing his mother, his father was deemed unfit to care for him, leaving him under his sister's care. He had already encountered legal troubles and experienced too much violence for his young age. When it was his turn to speak, Lofton initially refused. However, before the judge made the final decision, he hesitantly said, "I just want to say I'm sorry for your loss, but I did not kill your son. I wasn't the shooter. That's it, Judge." Regardless of whether Lofton pulled the trigger, the fact remained. Shane Varnadore was gone. A hardworking man, a loving son, and a devoted brother had lost his life over something senseless. His family was left with heartbreak that would never fully heal.
And I can't imagine what my life's going to be like. I'm sorry.
Lofton was given a second chance with parole in his sentence, yet Shane never had that opportunity. His family continues to grieve a life that could have been, all because of a single pizza delivery call that went terribly wrong. A young man lost his life over a pizza delivery. The next case shows how a trip to the mall turned into a nightmare when a petty argument spiraled into deadly violence.
I know and understand what I did was wrong, I suffer full responsibility for my actions. I was saying I'm sorry, but saying I'm sorry is not only what I've done.
Just 2 days before Christmas in 2022, a time when families are engrossed in holiday preparations, a tragic event left one family forever altered. That evening, inside the Nordstrom store at the Mall of America, 19-year-old John Tay Hudson lost his life in an act of cruel violence. An argument erupted between two groups of young men within the mall, quickly escalating into deadly violence. During the fight, John Tay was tackled to the ground. At that moment, 19-year-old Tayshawn Adams Wright and his accomplice, Lavon Longstreet, drew firearms and shot Jonte multiple times at point-blank range. A woman shopping with her daughter also sustained injuries from a stray bullet, causing them all to go into lockdown as shoppers fled in terror. Upon officers' arrival, Jonte was found with fatal gunshot wounds on the floor. Despite attempts to save him, he did not survive. Surveillance footage led investigators to identify the suspects. Following an intense manhunt, Adams Wright and Longstreet were arrested, each charged with second-degree murder and second-degree assault. Months passed until Adams Wright surprised everyone in court by openly admitting to killing Jonte. When questioned by his lawyer on the circumstances of the shooting, he responded, yes, but afterward expressed remorse for his actions.
I want to apologize for bringing pain and suffering to the victim family because of some lady who got shot.
Subsequently, the judge sentenced Adams Wright to 30 years in prison. Longstreet's trial is still pending, though he faces a similar outcome.
My head around this, no one who hasn't gone through what you're going through can. It's 30 years and 7 months. No.
For Jonte's mother, Lynn, no sentence could ever bring her son back. She expressed her heartbreak, saying, his parents will still have him. They can visit him, write to him, talk to him. But my son is gone forever. Her sister also mentioned in an interview, everybody loves him. He was a people person. She described Jonte as a loving and vibrant young man whose life was stolen far too soon.
He was funny, sometimes quiet. Like, everybody loved him. He was a people person. Bullet wound or something. I didn't think that nothing too serious about it.
An innocent mall visit ended in tragedy, altering a family's destiny. The senseless act of violence taking Jonte's life inflicted a deep wound on his family and their surrounding community. Although seeking justice, Jonte's mother knows that no verdict will suffice in replacing her son. Jonte's murder was a brutal act of senseless violence. The next case shows how a young mind can commit a horrific act.
You are charged with 1 count of manslaughter. It is a second-degree felony. It is punishable by up to 15 years Florida State Prison. Do you understand that?
On May 23, 2024, in Lauderdale Lakes, Florida, the shocking crime committed by 14-year-old Sofia Koval left a family and community reeling. After the beating death of her 79-year-old grandmother, Maria Koval, everyone struggled to comprehend how such horror emerged within a family. The day of Maria's tragic death, an emergency call led authorities to the Koval residence, where they discovered Maria unresponsive, with no hope of revival. Their investigation soon concluded that the perpetrator was her own granddaughter, Sofia. Family members struggled to understand how Sofia, once the bright and gentle girl of their family, could have done this. At just 14 years old, Sofia was taken into custody and placed in juvenile detention. At first, it seemed like her case would be handled in the juvenile system, but prosecutors soon had a different plan. On October 1st, prosecutors made a bold decision. Sofia would be charged as an adult with manslaughter. She was transferred from juvenile detention to the Broward County Jail and placed in protective custody. The courtroom was tense as a judge ruled that there was enough evidence to proceed with the case. Sofia prays that the decision will be in her favor, but the charge of manslaughter carries serious consequences.
14-year-old Sofia Koval openly prayed in court as she waited for her case to be called.
If convicted as an adult, Sofia could face up to 15 years in prison. There was also another complication. Sofia was not a U.S. citizen. If convicted, she could face deportation after serving her sentence. A Broward State Attorney, Harold F. Pryor, and a team of senior prosecutors carefully reviewed the case. However, because of her young age, there was a possibility that she could be sentenced under juvenile sanctions. In that case, she would serve a maximum of 3 years in detention and could be supervised until she turned 21.
On May 23, 2024, Sofia Koval did beat Yevgenia Koval about her head and body, resulting in multiple injuries. And during that beating episode,
after considering all the facts and evidence, they decided that the adult court was the right place for Sofia's trial. Because of the heinous nature of the crime, and after considering everything presented by the defense so far, I believe it is appropriate that this case should be handled in adult court, Pryor stated. While prosecutors wanted justice for Maria Koval, they also acknowledged that Sofia was still a child. They promised to work with her attorneys to find a resolution that balanced accountability with understanding her age and circumstances.
She is seen praying and crossing herself during that hearing. And her case was back in court today as the state is weighing whether to charge her as an adult.
The case left a family shattered. A grandmother lost her life, and a teenage girl now faced the consequences of a terrible act. The community struggled to understand how such violence could happen between loved ones. Judge Elizabeth Scherer also said it's a difficult decision.
Hold a 14-year-old in secure detention is very, very difficult under the law. Even when juveniles commit, first-degree felonies, robbery, kidnapping.
Sofia's case shows that even family ties can be broken by violence. However, the next case reveals a sinister plot that would take the life of a promising college student.
These are 14 and a 13-year-old boy. We should all remember that.
Family, including Tessa Majors' father, silently left court.
On a cold evening in December 2019, Tessa Majors, an 18-year-old Barnard College freshman, strolled near Morningside Park, Manhattan, harboring dreams and ambition. With life and opportunity in her hands, the few minutes ahead would, unfortunately, see them extinguished. Shortly before 7 p.m. on December 11th, 3 teenagers came into the park with one intention: to rob someone. Past deeds lay behind, but tonight, everything would change. They observed Tessa engrossed in her phone, making her their target. As Rashawn Weaver seized her from behind, Luchiano Lewis restrained her, searching her pockets. But Tessa wasn't going to give up easily. She fought back, even biting one of the attackers on the finger. That's when everything changed. Enraged, Weaver pulled out a knife and stabbed Tessa multiple times. One of the wounds pierced her heart. Even after being attacked, Tessa struggled to get away. She managed to climb up a flight of stairs near the park entrance, desperately trying to find help. At the top of the stairs, a security guard found her collapsed and bleeding. She was rushed to the hospital, but it was too late. Tessa Majors was gone. The very next day, police arrested a 13-year-old boy who matched the description of one of the attackers. He was wearing clothes and sneakers similar to those seen in surveillance footage. During questioning, he confessed that he and his friends had planned the robbery, but claimed he wasn't the one who stabbed Tessa. As police continued their investigation, they struggled to find the other suspects. One of them, Rashawn Weaver, had gone into hiding, with family members reportedly helping him avoid arrest. It took 2 weeks before the police finally caught him.
The other 2 suspects will be tried in adult court. Their trials on murder and robbery charges are pending.
Once all 3 suspects were in custody, the full details of the crime came to light. Prosecutors revealed that the attack wasn't just a random robbery gone wrong. It was intentional, cruel, and premeditated. The youngest of the attackers, who was just 13 at the time, pleaded guilty to first-degree robbery. Because of his age, he was sentenced to only 18 months in a juvenile detention center.
Anything you want to say on behalf of your son? Weaver's mother had no comments about her son, turning her head away. Neither did Lewis's parents.
Luchiano Lewis, who helped restrain Tessa, pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and first-degree robbery. He was sentenced to 9 years to life in prison, yet he shows no remorse for his actions.
The student was stabbed to death, was sentenced today, 9 years to life in prison.
He was one of 3 middle school students.
The final suspect, Rashawn Weaver, the one who held the knife, admitted to stabbing Tessa. He pleaded guilty to second-degree murder and was sentenced to 14 years to life in prison. The tragic murder of Tessa Majors shook the entire city. She was young, talented, and full of life. Her family and friends were devastated, left to grieve a life taken too soon. While her killers were caught and sentenced, no punishment could ever bring Tessa back. It was a heartbreaking reminder of how senseless violence can destroy lives. Tessa Majors' potential, curtailed by unforgiving fate, demanded her aspirations fall silent. Her profile symbolized stolen chance, submerged beneath malevolence, an unresolved tragedy, preserving undue loss. Tessa's case shows how teens had planned their crime from the very start. The next case shows how manipulation can lead to devastating consequences.
Did you hear something?
Yes, he was screaming bloody murder.
Okay. And was he actually saying the words bloody murder, or are you just using that as a phrase?
I was just using that as a...
On a quiet night in 2014, the Sikorsky family in Plymouth Township, Michigan, faced a nightmare they could never have imagined. Their adopted daughter, 15-year-old Roxana Sikorsky, had been plotting something unthinkable. An attack on her family. Roxana wasn't acting alone. Her then-boyfriend, Michael Rivera, who was older than her, had been guiding her every move from outside the house. He sent her messages, giving her step-by-step instructions. That night, with a knife in hand, Roxana entered her 12-year-old brother's room and stabbed him. She then attempted to attack her younger sister before fleeing the house and running away with Rivera. Thankfully, her brother survived, and authorities quickly apprehended Roxana and Rivera. Upon investigation, it was discovered that Roxana and Rivera intended to kill her family and escape together. Investigations revealed that Rivera had been directing Sikorsky through text messages, providing explicit instructions and even anatomical diagrams to ensure the lethality of the attacks. As the case went to court, Roxana pleaded guilty to assault with intent to murder. The trial was heartbreaking for her family, particularly her adoptive mother, Laureen Sikorsky. Instead of anger, Laureen begged for mercy, believing Roxana had been manipulated by Rivera into making terrible choices.
Roxy was misled and used by an older adult. However, nothing will benefit this child by sending her to jail.
She said in court, she will miss her high school prom, her graduation, her friends, and her family. She is in desperate need of continued psychological help.
Roxana is now 17 years old. She will miss her high school prom, her graduation, her friends, and her family. She is in desperate need of continued psychological help.
Roxana also spoke in court, expressing deep regret for her actions. She apologized to her family, saying she was sorry for not being the daughter they had hoped for, and promised to work on becoming a better person.
I would like to apologize to my family for not being the daughter they wished I would be. I promise that I will get better, no matter what happens.
Despite her mother's plea, the judge sentenced Roxana to 10 to 20 years in prison. She received credit for the 528 days she had already spent in custody and would undergo extensive psychiatric treatment while serving her time. Meanwhile, Michael Rivera, the man responsible for influencing Roxana's actions, was sentenced to life in prison for his role in the attack. The case left the Sikorsky family shattered. A mother lost the daughter she had adopted and loved, while two siblings had to recover from both psychological and emotional wounds. While Roxana's mother holds hope for her daughter's future, the scars of that night remain.
It is perfect. She has psychological damage from the orphanage in Poland and in her biological family. She was a good student, good girl, good friends. It's just a confluence of all bad events.
Some crimes are driven by anger, greed, or hatred. However, in this case, it was the influence of an older boyfriend and a young girl's misguided choices that led to a horrific nightmare. The stories of these young criminals serve as haunting reminders of how choices made in moments of anger and desperation can change lives forever. Yet no sentence can truly undo the pain caused. But there's more to uncover. In our next video on screen, we'll dig deeper into shocking cases and the lasting impact of these crimes for generations to come.